South Carolina, 1995. A seriously injured man is found lying on a rural road in Anderson County.
They saw him and almost ran him over and was able to stop. Back then there was no cell phone, so they had to go to a neighbor's house, call 911.
The injured man is quickly identified as 24-year-old local man Richard Martin, and it is clear his injuries are not the result of a mere accident.
When law enforcement arrived, Richard was still on the road and unconscious, but breathing.
Richard Martin had sustained blunt force trauma. It was so severe, it didn't seem like fists could do this.
We got to the hospital. As minute I went in that room, I knew my son was gone.
This brutal killing spurs investigators and the victim's own family alike to seek justice.
We started our own investigation then. That was our drive.
We were fearless. We went places where two females probably shouldn't go. The determination and the love for Richard is what really drove us.
Investigators quickly start to lean into potential suspects as a motive begins to emerge.
It's hard to understand the inner workings of jealousy all the time and where that comes from, but it was just so senseless.
He attacked Richard for something that every guy in their 20s has done at some point in their life.
In his mind, he was going to teach Richard a lesson, one final lesson.
This is the story of 24-year-old Richard Martin and how he was savagely murdered at the hands of a green-eyed killer.
Anderson, South Carolina, it's a very tight-knit southern community. Everyone knows everyone. It's got that homey feel to it. But also because it's in between Charlotte and Atlanta, you got a lot of people passing through.
Probably 230,000 folks in Anderson County at this point. So it's a fairly large county. A lot of beautiful scenery around here. We're close to the beach and we're close to the mountains. So the mountains are just north of us. And we have a lot of lakes that are around us and a lot of recreational activities that go with the lake, and fishing and people that ski and wakeboard and all that fun stuff.
Mix of working class people, very salt of the earth people, close enough to some big cities that you can get there in a relatively short amount of time and still live a pretty quiet life. So I think this is a very up and coming area. It's becoming a very desirable area to live.
Anderson, South Carolina was a bit different when this story took place on September 2nd, 1995. It was a lot more homier, there was a smaller population, so as tight-knit and as wonderful as it is today, I think it was even more tight-knit back then.
But just after 1 a.m., the peace of Anderson County is disturbed when a shocking discovery is made on a rural road.
At around 1:15 a.m., a couple driving a car find a body on the side of this rural back road called Welcome Road. He was badly beaten. It was very severe.
Just a random couple that came down the road. They had to go, of course, to a neighbor's house to use the phone because nobody had cell phones then.
What they do is they find the first house they can find, and they alert authorities that, hey, we have found a body here on Welcome Road.
The man is badly beaten, but still clinging to life. Emergency responders arrive on scene.
The initial responding officers would have established the crime scene and basically waited for detectives to get there. Detectives probably would have shown up about 45 minutes later, and by that point the victim had already been transported to Greenville Memorial Hospital for treatment.
The victim is identified as 24-year-old Richard Martin.
Richard Martin was a local man. He was raised in the area by his mother, a single woman, Ada Martin. He was a little bit introverted, but he still had friends. People liked him. He loved nature and animals. At the time, he was 24 years old, and he was working hard. He was trying to renovate a farmhouse to make his own, and he just had a lot going for him at the time.
He grew up in the country. There were only 4 or 5 houses on our road at the time. We both stayed in the woods whenever we could. We had 2 acres, and it was probably another acre between and less than a mile to his granddaddy's house. So he was up and down the road all the time. He would ride the tractor with Daddy, and he helped Mother in the garden. He was always a helper. He was always a giver.
Richard was an only child. However, he did have a sibling-like relationship with his cousin Melissa. They went to school together, they came home together, they would play outside together. So, that was really special. They had a really special bond between them.
Richard and I were cousins, and we lived next door to each other growing up. He was 2 years younger than me. But despite that, he always thought, even from a little boy, I guess, that he was the man in the relationship, and he was the protector in our lives. So whether we were in the woods or outside playing or in the house or whatever it may have been, he was going to make sure that I was taken care of. I was the China doll, and he was the man. So he always went first if we crossed the creek or he thought there might be a snake or whatever. He was the guy, right?
As he grew up, we hiked in the mountains to a point where he called one of the local mountains Mom's Pet Rock. And we camped as often as we could when he wasn't with his dad. We divorced before he turned 2. We camped on the beach, we camped in the mountains, we've camped on the lakes. We just did it every other weekend. And back then it was inexpensive. It didn't cost that much to do it. And there's plenty of places around here to take a teenager or a young man where he can take his friends later. And then later on, as a teenager, he took his buddies to the places that we had discovered on our adventures. Of course, as he even grew older, between his 11th and 12th grade, he worked during the summer putting up roofing because he wanted to buy a candy apple red Mustang. And he did. He was a giving person. And because of that, before he got his license, he put on there that he would be an organ donor. After graduation, he moved out to a little 2-bedroom house, not far from here again, where he was at that time doing vinyl siding, riding back and forth to work with me because our work was just a few miles apart. He was out on his own, and that he was already about 20 by then. So he was doing things that young men do at the time. He had long hair, he had tattoos, and he smoked, and he drank his beer. We were mom and son. There was a lot of times that he did things he wasn't supposed to, but then on the other hand, he was always there to help me. And even if we fought, the next morning we were okay. He was still mine, and I was proud of all he had accomplished.
September 2nd, 1995 was a typical Friday for Richard Martin. He'd finished work and he wanted to take a load off.
Friday afternoon, I let him out at his gate, and he turned around. He said, "Thanks, Mom. I love you."
He headed to the Waffle House. He knew some people there, and they made plans to meet up later at Nancy's. He ate at the Waffle House, then he went to Nancy's. And that was it. That's how his Friday night went, which was very standard for any young man. He has a few beers, maybe one too many, as is the case with many 24-year-olds, but it's a good night. The weekend is here and he's ready.
It may seem like a normal Friday night in Anderson County, But only a few hours later, his mother Ada receives a phone call.
The next thing we knew, my mother was calling to say that he had been injured.
Richard has been discovered seriously injured in the middle of a rural road. As emergency responders race him to the local hospital, it is clear that this is a sustained attack, and Richard has been left fighting for life. On the night of September 2nd, 1995, a man is discovered lying motionless on Welcome Road, badly beaten and barely alive. He's identified as 24-year-old Richard Martin. His family is stunned by the news and rushes to the hospital, fearing the worst.
We got to the hospital. Melissa's mother happened to work on that floor, the trauma center, and she got us upstairs real quick. And from time to time, we were able to go into the room, and it was terrible. Part of his long hair, which was down to his shoulders, had been shaved. One eye was closed, swollen closed, and he had granite blue eyes, so I could barely see one. He had place across his nose, and all those tubes going everywhere because they were keeping his body alive at that time. They did not think there was any hope. The severe head trauma had done so much damage. But we did. We spent several hours in there before they asked if I would be willing to donate his organs. As the minute I went into that room, I knew my son was gone. And knowing my son being such a giving person, I went ahead and donated because that's what he wanted to do. He gave his last gift was his organs. We wished they could have used his eyes, but they were too damaged. We stayed around until he was pronounced, and then we came on home. The next morning I woke up hoping that it had been a nightmare, but it wasn't.
There was some speculation too at the time that perhaps he was hit by a car, or hit by a truck mirror or something like that, but his injuries just didn't match up.
Richard suffered blunt force trauma to his head. It's our belief that that was the cause of his death.
It definitely matched with blunt force trauma as a result of somebody hitting somebody else with a blunt object, basically. Maybe a kind of weapon.
This was not an accident. This was malicious in nature.
Detectives immediately move the attack to a case of homicide and begin to secure the scene.
Our forensics today are so much better than they were back then. Back then, you didn't know really to collect DNA from blood samples and stuff like that, and fibers that may have come off of someone's shirt just because the technology wasn't there. So there was not a whole lot of physical evidence left at the scene other than Richard's blood and everything else. It just looked personal. The scene surrounding his death, the whole thing looked, there was something personal there.
There wasn't really any physical evidence. No DNA to speak of. The murder weapon was never recovered.
With no evidence emerging, investigators appeal for witnesses.
Very boots on the ground, old school type of police work where you have to go knock on doors, and that's how you get these cases solved when you don't have DNA evidence and physical evidence. From witnesses, we know that he went to Nancy's bar just looking to have a good time, drank some White Russians and some beers, and by all accounts, it was a normal night.
He's having a good time. He's a single 24-year-old, and when suddenly there's a girl who catches his eye, and there's some chemistry there.
They had a dance together. They were talking with each other. Nice looking lady, and so Richard caught her eye.
However, witnesses report that this interaction sparked a confrontation.
Richard's having a good time, but across the bar, there's a much older gentleman who's not happy about what's going down. He sees across the way, he sees Richard with his friends, he sees Richard with this girl, and everyone there can sense that. He's simmering, he's not happy with what he sees, he's stewing, he's angry, and he does confront Richard.
He was jealous over the girl. That's what we have consistently heard. There was an altercation between him and then Richard, perhaps some of the others that were in the group. Some yelling, some verbal altercations going on, maybe a little physical.
Nancy's isn't really known as a place where a lot of fights happen or anything like that. From everything that I read about Nancy, she kind of ran a tight ship over there. She was very protective over her bar. There was not a place that was known to have some fights. At one point, Richard had become sick and threw up on the dance floor. At that point, Richard was escorted out of the bar.
They say, "You've been overserved, enough's enough, get out." This confrontation is the last time anyone sees Richard alive.
In these witness accounts, there is one name that comes up time and time again.
The common denominator with all these witness accounts at Nancy's bar was Bobby. Bobby McLean, Bobby McLean, Bobby McLean. Everyone saw him fighting with Richard.
Witnesses that had pointed Bobby out as an individual that helped escort Richard out of Nancy's on the night that he was killed. So Bobby was identified fairly early in the investigation as a person of interest.
McLean is brought to the police station for questioning.
He had submitted to a polygraph examination. It's a machine that you basically get hooked up to, and it measures all sorts of physiological responses in order to questions. Some people don't necessarily 100% trust it. Some people say, well, of course, he's going to be nervous. He was getting interviewed by the police. There is science to it, whether it be your breathing rate, your heart rate, your brain waves and activity. Basically, it just gives us an idea and a picture that says if you are being truthful or you're being deceitful to questions that we're asking.
He does fail it, however. Once questions start coming around about, was there a confrontation between you and Richard? Was there a fight between you guys? It was fail, 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 fail.
There was deceit and there was deception on questions specifically relating to the murder of Richard Martin. Because on some other questions, there was no indication of deception. So when it comes to that, it's just another tool that we can use as investigators to say, this person's not telling us the whole truth. They might tell the truth about where they were, but they're not going to tell us the truth about what their activities were. They're not admissible in court. So we can't use them in court, but we can use them as a tool throughout the investigation.
Bobby McLean fails the polygraph test, but detectives do not have enough evidence to charge him.
I think Richard was an easy target for Bobby. And I think, anger issues combined with alcohol, I think he picked Richard out as a soft target.
McLean was the prime suspect, but there just wasn't anything to tie him physically to the crime scene, and so that made it too challenging to charge him with anything.
While McLean remains a suspect, investigators pursue other lines of inquiry.
Investigators had a lot to work with because not only was there the fight at Nancy's bar between Richard and Bobby, but elsewhere at another place called Randy's bar, there was another pretty violent encounter. There was another fight over there. So there was a lot of chatter going around, and that's a lot to sift through. And then, of course, 1995, you don't have surveillance. So a lot of it's word of mouth, especially in these smaller towns.
There were rumors that Richard had gone to Randy's, which is another bar, and that he was involved in a fight there. I think when you have that many different stories out there, to narrow in on one is hard.
It's a very unique investigation, especially in these small towns. People aren't inclined to come forward because they do know the suspect often. They know the suspect's family. Everything's so tight-knit, and so that becomes challenging for investigators.
I think that the investigators did great police work. I just think that there was too many loose ends to definitively go forward with specifically the Bobby McLean killed Richard Martin angle.
Desperate for answers, Richard's family tries to help with the investigation.
We gave them every information that came to us. And in February of '96, the original investigator said the way it was, there was no new evidence, and there was nothing else he could or would do until something else came in.
With no concrete evidence tying Bobby McLean to the murder of Richard Martin and no other leads emerging, the case goes cold and the killer remains at large. Without enough evidence to charge a suspect, the investigation into the 1995 murder of Richard Martin in Anderson County goes cold, but his family refuses to let the crime be forgotten.
In February of '96, the original investigator said there was no new evidence. After that, they shut us down every way. I would spend my 10-minute breaks for lunch from working to call the office and see if we heard anything.
Jim had, as a detective, had put a lot of work into that case, really worked hard on it. Meanwhile, investigating other cases, and I think he did a really good job on a lot of cases. I don't think Richard's case was ever forgotten.
With detectives busy on other cases, Richard's family decide to take on the case themselves.
The first investigator basically told us there was just nothing else he could or would do. And so Ada and I, at that time, said, well, if he will not, we will.
We started our own investigation then. That was our drive.
We could not just sit back and let Richard just not ever have answers for what happened to Richard. Richard would have moved heaven and earth, climbed every mountain, and swam every sea if that had been his mother or I or any of our other family members, and we had to do the same for him.
Ada Martin, she took a very boots-on-the-ground approach, knocking on doors, talking to everybody. She was not going to stop until she found out who killed her only child.
We didn't even have computers, but Melissa's mother-in-law did, and we did our first flyer. We put those out. Anytime anything came, we went back, and if we considered it a lead, we learned that along the line. Not a clue, but a lead. We would trace it down, and if it was good, we would take it to the sheriff's office, and they would either turn it down or see what they could find. They always wanted information that had a name behind it, and sometimes people didn't want to give a name. We learned that the hard way.
But determination and the love for Richard is what really drove us. I was in my 20s also when Richard was murdered, and so I still had some growing up to do myself. Even though I had 2 kids and was married, I was still very young. And I was learning to navigate life that young, and a lot of other things happened in our family, though, even along with Richard. My dad died, my mom died, Ada's sister. My aunt was killed in a car wreck. All of these things happened within several years of each other. So we were navigating all of these things in life while we were trying to solve a homicide. So it was determination, just sheer drive and love.
One of the wonderful things about Ada is that she was the constant detective in this case. And so as the sheriff's office saw multiple administrations come and go over the years, she was there. And sometimes, that can be frustrating. You have to reacquaint yourselves with the law enforcement working on Richard's case. You have to, fill them in on all the gaps. You have to, get them familiar on the case. And I think that's just was something really spectacular about her, was that she continued to evolve as this case evolved, as law enforcement evolved over the years.
Richard's mother, Ada, had a hand in making sure that no matter who the sheriff was, you were going to know Richard and know his case. I feel like all the sheriffs, it was important to them, Ada's case, and I just think that our guys, we have some very great detectives, and so one thing that we did is we just kept putting fresh eyes on it.
It's so important for parents of murdered, children to keep their faces and their names out there. And one of the ways that Ada did this was she created these playing cards. She had her son's face and his information printed on these playing cards to be dispersed in the prison system. And that's such a neat tool, isn't it? Because you have people behind bars who be like, hey, I've heard something about this, or, perhaps I shared a cell with somebody who mentioned this. It can really ring a lot of bells.
We had been on the news, we had been in the newspaper, we did a local radio talk show one time. There was no way we would ever stop.
Over the years, we've been told all kind of different stories, things that we disproved to ourselves. We knew better. One was a girl talking about his polo shirt. My son never wore a polo shirt. He wore Harley Davidson t-shirts. That was his brand. And things like that we didn't take because we knew it wasn't right. We learned where he was on Welcome Road. The folks had actually found him. Then we went to their living room and sat down. They were delightful people. They were an older couple coming home from vacation, and they found him in the road. And we actually talked to the people whose house he was found in front of time and time again. They were just friendly people.
We were fearless. We went places where two females probably shouldn't go, and we were prepared for that. We would talk to anybody that would talk to us.
Of course, we run into a lot of people that didn't want to talk to us at all. One of those was Bobby McLean. I did speak to him one time because I thought he was a witness. Bobby didn't want to talk to us at all.
Ada gets no further information from Bobby McLean. Months turn into years, but she refuses to give up. In 2014, 19 years after Richard's murder, a Facebook page is created to raise awareness and invite potential witnesses to come forward.
We just wanted to get his name out there more. And Richard's page, it's been a good outlet for Ada, Richard's mom. And for me, it's been a good way to keep his case out there. We have also received messages and leads on Richard's case through Richard's page. I can't say that any of them really probably led to anything that was groundbreaking, but we have received leads, which is great.
We did the yards and benefits to make money for his reward. It was out there. It got up to $10,000 at one point, and still nothing came in.
You want to keep your case alive. Unfortunately, that is up to the family. As hard as that is to say, and as hard as that is to do, that's what it takes. It's hard. It's a hard path. We haven't come all this way just to stop.
Despite the lack of solid leads, Richard's family's devotion keeps his case alive. In 2017, their persistence finally pays off when a witness comes forward with crucial new information. In 2017, 22 years after the murder of 24-year-old Richard Martin, a new sergeant is assigned to the case. Much like Richard's family, he is determined to finally solve it.
In 2017, that's when Sergeant Hill came to the county from Greenville, and he just got right on it.
My name's Scotty Hill. I'm a staff sergeant with the Anderson County Sheriff's Office in the Criminal Investigations Division. The case was assigned to me, so one of the first things you want to do when you're assigned a case is meet the families. So I met Ada and realized really quickly that Ada was a different kind of victim's mother in a good way, a very positive way. She is very much a mother who was not going to rest until she got justice for her son.
There wasn't a person in law enforcement who came through the Anderson County Sheriff's Office without meeting, who didn't meet Ada. I mean, she got everyone's number there, and Sergeant Scotty Hill comes along and he sees this case and he really takes it home.
He started the ball rolling as far as reopening the case and trying to get to an answer on who killed Richard Martin.
Richard was from the same area I grew up in, so, I remember even as a kid kind of hearing stuff about it. Not a whole lot. There was billboards and stuff in the area about the unsolved murder of Richard Martin.
As long as Scotty was there, we would have meetings at least twice a month or any other time that we wanted one or he wanted to talk to us.
Ada's investigative work was instrumental in getting the new investigators caught up in the case.
She has all the details of everything she's ever concluded herself and findings from various detectives over the years.
The notebook is well known in the Criminal Investigations Division.
She's held on to that notebook. She had it with her in case somebody came up to her and gave her a piece of information, or she learned something new real quick. She would add it to the book. And so that book, of course, worked hand in hand with our detectives. Like I said, she wasn't going to let any detail of Richard's case fall by the wayside.
So mind you, it's been 22 years since this couple found a broken body on the side of the road. But thanks to Ada, and now with this new guy, Scotty Hill, in the case, there's new life breathed into it, and there's a lot of renewed interest, and things are starting to move, and one of those moving parts is a witness who comes forward.
In June of 2017, the witness said he came forward because it was just wearing on his conscience that he knew about Richard's death and had never come forward before. That he just said he got to the point where he couldn't even sleep at night. He had to tell somebody what he knew about the case. He remembered being involved in a fight, or at least present at a fight that happened the night Richard died. He said it happened at Nancy's bar. Once I started running down some of the people the names he had given us that were involved in this fight, I asked him if he knew Bobby McLean, and he laughed and said that was his father-in-law at the time of Richard's death. So we started talking to him about Bobby, and that's when we got a lot of background information on Bobby and what kind of person he was, especially at the time of Richard's death. We learned that Bobby would go to bars and drink. He would flirt with women. If someone interfered with him flirting with a woman, he got very angry, very envious, and would try to fight that person. We found out that he always carried some sort of blackjack or small baseball bat, as it was described, with him. Found out he had a very short, hot temper. He had tried to assault his son-in-law on several occasions, even swinging a tire iron at him at one point, barely missing him.
It's kind of reinstating that we're dealing with a man who is prone to violence and pretty prone to jealousy.
The most interesting thing he told us was that shortly after Richard died, Bobby completely changed. He stopped going to bars. He changed his lifestyle completely, which is that's about the time I realized there was something connected there, that's not a normal thing. Bobby McLean was a suspect from day one, it appears. They interviewed him very shortly after Richard was discovered, after Richard passed away. He was even given a polygraph examination back in 1995.
Something that's really curious about this was that he was actually married at the time in 1995. But his wife was very unaware of what happened. She had no idea that her husband was questioned. And it really begs the question, like, well, if you're an innocent person, why wouldn't you tell your wife, hey, I was questioned by police for something I didn't do? So it's very peculiar.
So it seems like he was a suspect from the beginning of the case. As far as my investigation, he became the primary suspect to me.
With the spotlight back on Bobby McLean, police set out to track him down. But on investigation, they receive information that stops them in their tracks.
With this newer 2017 investigation, of course, it would be natural that law enforcement wants to talk to McLean. However, he's been dead now for some time. He died from stomach cancer and other medical complications in 2010.
It would have been great to be able to go back and speak with Bobby again, but unfortunately we never got that opportunity.
Despite this, investigators are still determined to solve this case once and for all and name Bobby McLean as Richard Martin's killer.
We hired what we call a ringer from New York City, Detective Corey Smith, who retired from the New York Police Department as a cold case investigator in 2024. And so when Detective Smith got here, the first case I wanted him to look at was Richard's case. And in fact, he started, and I think on the second day, I don't even think he had his office completely set up. I just brought the case in and said, read this case and tell me what you think.
Sergeant Hill came in and dropped the box off on my desk and said, here, read this. Didn't give me any idea as far as what his thoughts were, what his opinions were, and I appreciated that. And I think over the course of about 8 weeks, it took me to get through the whole case and put some things together and organize it. We were able to, I was able to sit down with him, and he asked me what I thought and who I thought killed Richard Martin, and I flat out told him Bobby McLean. We kind of compared notes and had some back and forths, and I think that between the two of us and the work that he had done, which again he did great job, he did great work. I think we were able to kind of put our heads together, and I told him, we had a conversation, said we need to get the solicitor involved. So once we agreed on that, we were able to put a presentation together. I put a PowerPoint together where it kind of just laid out the entire case, showcased injuries, that it made sense and everything that we had found. And when they came and they listened, I was able to present it to them. And at that point, they said that we would have had probable cause to arrest Bobby McLean for the murder of Richard Martin.
We were able to announce on May 13th of 2025 that Bobby McLean was the suspect in Richard's death. And we did that through a press conference here at the sheriff's office.
They said in the press conference, Richard danced with a girl, and it's believed that it made somebody angry, which is really crazy. Nobody's life is worth, I'm mad at you because you danced with a girl. To take somebody's life for that is just crazy.
Bobby McLean's actions was just textbook jealousy. I mean, this was a man who just could not stand the idea of Richard Martin dancing with another woman, just having a fun time, just being a 24-year-old young man. He hated that. Why? Why? Because he was jealous. It's only a short time after that McLean and a bouncer at the bar escort Richard Martin out.
And I think Richard probably left because he felt like that was probably the best thing for him to do, is just go ahead and leave, get out of there. I think he drove up on him, got out of the truck, there's probably some words exchanged, and I think Bobby pulled something out of the truck, a blunt object of some kind, and I think he just started probably wailing on Richard. And, did he intend to kill him? I mean, I don't, if you're hitting somebody with some kind of object, you got to realize what the potential outcome's going to be. I think in his mind he was going to teach Richard a lesson, one final lesson. Left him for dead on the side of the road.
It's hard to understand the inner workings of jealousy all the time and where that comes from, and where that came from McLean, but it was just so senseless.
I refer to Bobby McLean as an animal, and I've always wondered what I wondered about, whether when he was in the front of his mirror shaving or something, did he see Richard behind his shoulder or something? And how can anybody carry that for years?
Jealousy can make people do some crazy stuff. Jealousy and pride is one of those things that definitely creates a lot of destruction in its path.
Ultimately, we didn't get to put handcuffs on somebody. Yes, we're there and we know what happened. To not be able to actually put the handcuffs on somebody and get them in front of a judge to see that part of it through, I think that this one's always going to stand out for that reason too.
You might say I'm mad at Bobby McLean for not being here to stand trial. I can't help it. I wanted that. We have fought for that all these years, and I just feel cheated.
And it's a little frustrating, and as an investigator, because you always want that day in court. But we did the best we could with what we had, and we're able to give Ada and all of Richard's family some type of conclusion.
I don't use the word closure. Even if someone had been arrested and convicted in 1995, it would never close the hole in my heart because my son is not with me. I use the word conclusion to that part of Richard's story.
Without the incredible help of Richard's family, the conclusion of this case would not have been possible. Today, his family offer support to other families suffering similar tragedies.
We haven't come all this way just to stop. There's still other things for us to do. There's still work. This may not be Richard's, but there's still other families, and there's still other families that need support, and they need help navigating this life. Because this is a hard life. I'm glad we kept fighting. And if anybody ever, if they came to me today and said, well, here's a little piece, there might be something else, you know what we would do? We'd be on the trail. We just would, because that's who we are.
We're going to continue to keep his memory going and give other families a visual that they can see. They don't have to sit back in a corner, and my son's responsible for that.
South Carolina. Emergency services respond to a 911 call at Harrison Island Road and find 24-year-old Jillian Angner in a critical condition with a gunshot wound to her neck.
It wasn't on a busy street. It wasn't in a busy neighborhood. It was secluded.
This was premeditated. This was a targeted crime. This was deliberate.
Jillian's 6-year-old son witnesses the senseless attack on his mother, but manages to escape to safety.
Her son was in the back seat and had to crawl out of a broken window, and he fled into the marsh because he was scared.
Police learn about an ex-boyfriend who had stalked Jillian after their breakup the previous year.
He would come to her place of business. He would send her flowers there. He would leave Legos on top of her car for her child. She started parking in different locations because, that just made her feel uncomfortable.
These first 6 months after separating from an abuser have a heightened risk of intimate partner homicide for women.
There was a break-in to her house a few months prior that the family believed was him.
This is the story of a cruel and premeditated obsession that turned deadly and ended in a family tragedy.
His last words to her were, "Well, I'm not going to give up."
The coastal town of Bluffton is located in Beaufort County, South Carolina.
Beaufort is a beautiful spot in the Low Country. It is on the Intercoastal Waterway.
Everybody's pretty close-knit together. You pretty much know what's happening everywhere on the island at all times.
People love going out on the May River on their boats. Everyone kind of knows everybody. Depending on your last name, you might have some history planted here. It's that kind of town.
On the morning of March the 2nd, 2023, 24-year-old Jillian Angner leaves her home on Harrison Island Road with her 6-year-old son.
Jillian was very close with her family. She lived in a residence on their property, but it was detached from them.
She was leaving to take her 6-year-old son to school when she was ambushed and multiple shots were fired at her vehicle. Jillian's son was a 6-year-old boy at the time, and he was put in a position that nobody should be put in to watch his mother go through what she did.
Her mother, Beth, down the street had heard the shots and actually was the first person to come across Jillian slumped over in the driver's seat, and then her son coming out of the marsh saying, "Mommy's dead, can I come live with you?"
Jillian's family members call 911 and first responders race to the scene.
The initial call came out for road patrol to respond, and you just knew at that moment we're going to need several investigators to go out there. This is going to be something not normal to get that call at 7:30 in the morning.
Harrison Island Road is just a little peninsula on the marsh that is purely residential. There are no businesses down there, so there's not through traffic.
There's only a few other houses past where this happened, so we kind of knew this wasn't an average shooting. It was something personal to this.
While Jillian's family cares for her son, Jillian is transferred to the nearest emergency room, where responders continue to try and save her life.
There were paramedics and fire department personnel on scene. The victim's vehicle appeared to have been wrecked or come to a stop in front of a tree on the shoulder of the road.
Police immediately launch an investigation into the horrific attack on the young mother of one.
The road patrol deputies who arrived on scene did a very good job of clearing out the area and putting up crime scene tape.
Family members were arriving, witnesses were standing there, and investigators were already starting to try to locate evidence.
They had identified shell casings in the roadway that was further back on the road from where the vehicle was. And we also had the placement of the bullet holes in the victim's vehicle. It had what appeared to be a bullet hole in the front windshield directed towards the driver, I believe. And then we had some in the driver's side of the vehicle.
Investigators carefully examine the crime scene as they try to build a picture of how events unfolded that morning.
The initial information we had was passed on to the investigators. We determined who was going to do what job. So I took over doing the crime scene portion of the scene and collecting the evidence. I had another few investigators with me that were assisting me with that. We marked everything, took photos of where everything was at, took measurements of where the items were at. We had broken glass in the roadway from where the vehicle was hit. There was a long trail of fluid that had leaked from the vehicle all the way back closer to where her house was, showing that that's likely where the vehicle's first struck by the projectiles. I contacted our drone team to come out, and they flew our drone through the area, filming videos from different altitudes in order to document where the vehicle was and where all the evidence was at before we picked anything up off the ground.
In their hunt for the gunman, police need to build up a victim profile that will help them understand the crime. They start by talking to the people closest to Jillian, her friends and family.
I just got an overlay of what was going on, and then we had some leads to quickly get onto, so I went off and started talking to people, interviewing them.
I arrived on scene and immediately was directed to where her sister, her mother, her son, and her grandfather were, and asked to speak with them and meet with them and provide basic initial victim services.
I did briefly speak with Jillian's grandfather, who was there, and I escorted him out of our crime scene off the roadway into a deputy's vehicle so he could sit down. He had gotten a phone call from a family member who was asking him if he heard the shots that were fired, because the family's home was only a few hundred yards away from where her vehicle came to a stop.
We learned that she was an outgoing person. She had a 6-year-old son who she was deeply in love with. Everything she did was for him. She would go to work at the pharmacy where she worked at locally, and she would come home and help him and take care of him. Everybody at the pharmacy was heartbroken to hear about this. They just knew her because she would talk to every single person that would come in there, and everybody in her family and all the local friends that were just couldn't believe that something like this would happen to her.
Jillian's family members have their own ideas on who was behind the savage attack. One name surfaces time and time again: John Patrick Shea.
John Patrick Shea had dated Jillian for about 5 months. It wasn't even that long.
We knew that she had previous boyfriends that we needed to follow up on, but John Patrick Shea kept coming back as the person that we needed to make sure that we interviewed.
Her sister had described an incident a couple months prior to Jillian being shot where John Patrick Shea and Jillian had taken a trip with Jillian's son to North Carolina, and that there appeared to have been an argument surrounding the 6-year-old son.
At one point, Patrick is trying to discipline the child. The relationship really wasn't at a point where that would really be appropriate. And she's like, no, this is not your territory. And he gets upset and he leaves for hours. Once she got home, she was like, you know what? I don't want my child around this man, and the time is now to cut things off. Unfortunately, Patrick wouldn't take no for an answer, and that's when he began stalking her.
Investigators need to speak to John Patrick Shea to find out if he is behind the brutal attack that has left a young mother in hospital fighting for her life. March 2023. Bluffton Police Department in South Carolina have launched an investigation following the shooting of 24-year-old Jillian Angner while driving her 6-year-old son to school. Jillian is left fighting for her life in hospital while the gunman remains at large.
I had spoken to her a handful of months prior to this incident happening, where she had reached out to find out how to obtain a restraining order against John Patrick Shea. She needed the prior police report numbers that she had filed with local agencies as well as with the sheriff's office. And I provided her with all of that information so that she could go to court and present it to a judge.
Unfortunately, at the time, there was not enough for her to get that restraining order or proceed on that burglary case.
The other investigators talked to him pretty early on to at least get an initial statement from him about where he was to further progress our investigation.
We did go find John Patrick Shea and then ask him about his whereabouts that morning. He said he was out at the bar the night before on Hilton Head, and he got a ride home at like 2 a.m. from a friend, and we did talk to her, and she did corroborate that part of his statement. He drove there that night, and then he ended up leaving his car there, and then we saw later on Thursday morning, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, he went back and picked his car up.
Then police receive a new lead in their investigation from an unlikely source.
There was a painting van that was going in the opposite direction that actually saw Jillian's car. When they came back around, they saw law enforcement inspect to them and search their memory. Well, did we see anyone else on this road? And they were able to describe what they believed to be a Ford F-150, dark in color with halo headlights that was going at a high rate of speed. And then through the community of Bluffton, they are able to pull surveillance footage from a number of different places.
They located a ring camera which spotted an F-150 in the parking lot area around the same time as the shooting, and when they tracked that down, they found the driver of the vehicle.
So that information was passed on to our road deputies, the ones that are on the street answering calls every day, going around and patrolling neighborhoods. We're looking for this type of vehicle. Please keep an eye out for it. A few days later, a road deputy spotted that vehicle and was able to follow it to where it was being parked at, and we were able to get the license plate and determine who it belonged to and further our investigation from that.
The driver was Wyatt Norton. We figured out where he lived, so I went and asked him his whereabouts, and he said he was at home sleeping, and he let a friend, or a guy he knows as Zach, borrow his truck.
Norton's story about his truck raises suspicions that he might be involved in the attack.
My initial gut reaction was he wasn't telling us the whole truth, if any. I did show him a picture of his truck and told him that his truck was seen in Bluffton, and so he continued with the story.
If you get too focused on just one suspect and don't keep your possibilities open to everything else around, it leads to tunnel vision, and also it can lead you astray. It was just as important to get alibis for all the people that we didn't think were involved as to get the story from Wyatt and Shea, because all those things come to bear in court.
We also took Jillian's car to the local police department, and we did a search warrant on that and recovered all the projectiles as we could from it and any other evidence.
I was tasked with interviewing another boyfriend who had been talking to Jillian around this time frame, and I went to the other side of the county where he lived, tracked him down, found out that he was at work around the time of the shooting and had an alibi, putting him on the other side of the county when it happened.
It's at this point that the Bluffton Police Department receives a call from Wyatt Norton.
He ended up calling the office and saying that he wanted to talk to us, and he didn't tell us the whole truth initially, and he wanted to meet with us with his lawyer. We met with him, and he laid everything out with us, and everything he told us matched up what we were finding with Jillian's car, with the scene there on Harrison Island Road.
He knew Patrick through the food and beverage industry. They were not particularly close, but he had asked him if he wanted to earn some extra money and do this drug run.
He was just supposed to give John Patrick Shea a ride to either drop off some dope or get some dope. That was the entire premise that he thought he was doing. And John Patrick Shea offered to pay him quite a bit of money to do this.
They had literally been in touch with each other over the week prior to try and get together and do this run. When he picked him up on March 2nd at 6:45, Patrick had a black backpack that Wyatt assumed the drugs were in. Later, obviously, he found out that he also had gloves, a ski mask, and a 9mm in there.
He described where they parked on the side of a little dirt road off of Harrison Island. They watched a car leave the house, Jillian's house. He described the car. He said that John Patrick Shea shot through his driver window, and then after Jillian drove by, he shot again out the passenger, and all of that corroborated the trajectory of the bullets that we found in the vehicle.
Everything happened so quickly, he didn't even know who was in the car or if anyone had been shot.
After John shot at Jillian in her vehicle, apparently John Patrick Shea pointed the gun and put it in Wyatt's ribs and told him to drive. And eventually, if you talk about this at all, if I hear anything about this, I'm coming after you and your family.
Following Wyatt's testimony to police, the focus of the investigation shifts to John Patrick Shea.
Shortly after the interview, within 24 hours, we were getting arrest warrants and we started staking out John Patrick Shea's apartment and just seeing what he was going to do.
After Wyatt gave his statement and we had an idea of the time frame, we knew where the neighborhood was, where the incident happened, and then where Patrick lived, so we knew around what time Wyatt was going to be bringing him back to his house and dropping him off. There's only a couple of ways to get to that apartment complex. I went and got some video footage and reviewed it from a gas station that's right near the apartment complex and was able to get that distinct truck on video coming back right during the time frame where he was bringing him back after the shooting happened. So that was one of the pieces that we had to corroborate what Wyatt was telling us.
John Patrick Shea is a very interesting guy. He was very into the occult. He was a self-proclaimed Satanist. I'm not sure how much Jillian would have even known about that when they first met.
I interviewed Jillian's roommate, who actually lived in the residence with her, and she did mention John Patrick Shea as being a source of trouble.
The way he was acting just kind of, I guess, made him scared for her. She had a break-in at her residence October the year prior, and everybody thought he was involved in that as well.
There was no forced entry, but at one point he had the lock code. A pentagram was scrawled into one of the TVs and was scrawled into another one of the TVs. And that was after a night where Patrick had run into Jillian at a bar in Savannah called the Barrel House and had seen her talking to some other guys, and it had just set him off.
With police now closing in on John Patrick Shea, Jillian's family continue to wait by her hospital bed, praying she will recover from her injuries.
Jillian's mother, when we met, she had already provided her basic statement to responding officers, and so ultimately my goal was to provide any sort of comfort and be there to liaison between them and law enforcement. I had an incredibly hard time with Jillian's son. For a 6-year-old boy, it was really impressive how he carried himself. He really had a lot of courage. The one thing that her son said that really stuck with me as a victim advocate was that he was really worried about his mom's heart. Because he had seen his mother get shot, he was worried about her heart.
When an intimate partner crime occurs after the breakup of a relationship and there has been stalking involved, the actual event can seem like it's occurring out of the blue or at a very random location or a random time. Behind the scenes, there is often considerable planning involved on the part of the perpetrator, who has decided that since he is unable to convince his partner to return to the relationship, that he is going to carry out the age-old thought of, if I can't have her, no one can.
The signs were there, and after the breakup, those reports started coming in, and Ultimately, if they had seen that as escalation, perhaps this could have been preventable.
When she broke things off with Patrick reached out to one of her friends and said, do you think there's any hope of Jill and I getting back together? She said no. I think she's made it very clear. You should probably move on. And his last words to her were, well, I'm not going to give up.
Wyatt's testimony convinces investigators that John Patrick Shea is the shooter, who, in a fit of jealous anger, recklessly fired a handgun at Jillian's car. Bluffton Police Department are closing in on 29-year-old John Patrick Shea, who they believe is responsible for the shooting of 24-year-old Jillian Angner while driving her 6-year-old son to school, leaving the mother fighting for her life in hospital. Jillian had been in a brief relationship with Shea, which she left after his controlling behavior towards her and her 6-year-old child.
He was very jealous. He did not want to give up on Jillian. She was a young, pretty girl and didn't have any trouble getting a date, so I just don't think it was very meaningful to her.
Shea was driven to the crime scene by Wyatt Norton, who believed he was only doing a drug run for extra money.
I think everything he told us was very vital, being as he's telling you that he was involved in this heinous crime. You kind of want to make sure you double check everything. I 100% believed him. He showed the emotions that you should show when you're coming clean and telling law enforcement what you did. After our interview, he ended up taking us back there to the crime scene and reiterated what he told us and kind of showed us where everything was.
Police now make the move to arrest John Patrick Shea before he can escape justice.
We ended up making another phone call to John Patrick Shea from Wyatt, and it was within 15-20 minutes after that, John Patrick Shea was leaving his house with a guitar and a suitcase. He had his passport and, items that you wouldn't normally take to just leave for a few hours or so. It appeared he was just trying to get out of the area.
He had his birth certificate. He also, oddly, obsessively had nude pictures of Jillian with him.
We had the arrest warrant at that point. Members of our violent crime task force went in and approached him and took him into custody.
I think he probably had a clue that police were going to be coming for him very soon. So for them to arrest him as he's packing his bags to get the heck out of Dodge, I think that shows just the tenacity of the investigators and the court system to ensure that he wasn't able to flee.
When I knew that we had eyes on him and that the judge had signed the arrest warrant for him, I said, when we make the arrest, I want to be the one that calls the family to tell them. And the utter relief that could be heard on the other end of the line, it was loud.
We ended up taking him back in and doing an interview with him afterwards. When I presented him with the arrest warrants that he said initially he had nothing to do with it. He knew exactly what had happened and, the guilt was getting to him, and he knew he needed to try to help himself. He asked if he could talk to a lawyer, and then eventually he said, well, what's in it for me? Let's make a deal type thing.
Investigators continue to build their case against John Patrick Shea, who now faces multiple criminal charges, including the attempted murder of Jillian and her 6-year-old son, discharging a firearm into an occupied vehicle, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime.
His cell phone was ultimately seized from him, and eventually a search warrant was obtained to search that cell phone, and it was turned over to me to examine. We were able to recover some deleted text messages going back and forth, planning to meet up, planning to do something, Wyatt canceling.
Looking through the text messages, they tried to do it Tuesday morning, but John Patrick Shea's roommate was still awake, so he told Wyatt, hey, we can't do it today.
I wouldn't say it was spelled out, but it was clear that they were both communicating back and forth in order to go and do something, which matched up with what Wyatt had told us.
Wednesday morning they tried to do it as well, but Wyatt Norton woke up late, so they weren't going to make the time. There was a specific time that John Patrick Shea wanted to do this. Then they eventually got to it Thursday morning, so John Patrick Shea thought about doing this.
Police search John Patrick Shea's home and make some disturbing discoveries.
We got a search warrant for his apartment as well. There was actually a drawing on a notepad of a truck that looked like Wyatt's F-150 and a gun, which I thought was strange. And then also he had somewhat of a shrine to some voodoo stuff, like a couple voodoo dolls were in there. There were many pictures of Jillian. One of the pictures actually had red wax on it.
He had a number of books on the occult. He had defaced pictures of Jillian that were hidden behind various things in his apartment.
Lots of very disturbing things were found during that search. Clearly, his obsession had grown and become ritualistic, unhealthy, from the voodoo dolls to satanic components and a shrine to her.
It didn't really affect the way I approached the investigation. I felt like someone could have reached this level of obsession, or someone could have done terrible things like this without having that sort of thing involved. And I don't know that I put a lot of stock into how much of involvement that was in this case. I felt like we were dealing with someone who was obsessed. It seemed like the family were pretty well aware of that. It seemed like his friends were well aware of that. And it just led him down this path.
We definitely took all of the photos of Jillian. We took the voodoo dolls, the notebook, the drawing, which to me kind of showed why else would you draw a truck and a gun like that? He didn't own any trucks or anything.
His roommate told us Patrick tried to, date around a little bit, but with every failed relationship, he kept spiraling and he began to drink more.
There was a list of 10, 15, 20 female names on there. He was very obsessive. He got a hold of something and he wanted to keep it for himself.
It was just kind of like one of those very odd, obviously obsessive behaviors where somebody would catalog every female that he had physically ever done anything with for a period of years. Females that he had been involved with since it appeared middle school.
The fact that he had a shrine in his home that was of her really indicates a very extreme level of obsession and possessiveness that goes well beyond the bounds of what we would typically describe as sort of normal levels of jealousy when a relationship ends and one of the partners decides to move on and seek new relationships.
The music got louder and angrier. The rituals and ceremonies that he did got more frequent. He would stay up later and later. The general behavior and chaos of the apartment had just kind of spiraled at that point.
John Patrick Shea is charged with the attempted murder of Jillian Angner and placed in custody while awaiting trial.
We didn't have the smoking gun, as they say, but we had a key witness, first-hand knowledge of the events that matched all the evidence we collected.
Wyatt was never charged with anything because the investigation and me as the prosecutor believed that he was in a position, once this all went down in front of him, that he was under duress driving while he had a gun poked into his ribs.
Jillian's family continue waiting by her hospital bedside, but with no hope of recovery, they finally agree to switch off her life support machine on August the 5th, 2023.
When Jillian was shot in the neck, it entered through the left side and it exited the right side. Immediately, she needed medical assistance to remain alive. And so she was in a vegetative state for about 5 months before the family had to make that terrible decision to take her off the breathing machines.
I met the family within 30 minutes of this incident occurring, and I remained in contact with members of her family up until the day that she was removed from life support.
After Jillian's death, John Patrick Shea's charge is upgraded to murder on the 6th of August 2023.
When Jillian ended up being taken off life support at the hospital, I served him with a murder warrant at the jail, and the only thing he asked me was, "Is Wyatt okay?"
As soon as John Patrick Shea shot Jillian, he turned the gun on Wyatt and said, "Drive." So that's why Wyatt did not immediately come forward. But eventually, within 48 hours, he had to come to Jesus with his parents, and he knew what he had to do. And he was very forthright in all of our pretrial meetings, very emotional, really felt for Jillian's family and what they must have been going through.
In my experience, I have not encountered very many intimate partner homicides where a third person is involved, even unwittingly, as someone who ended up driving the getaway vehicle. And that, I think, is quite an unusual aspect of this case.
Jillian's grieving family now wait for their day in court, when John Patrick Shea will finally go on trial for the pain and suffering he has inflicted upon them. Beaufort County, South Carolina. 29-year-old John Patrick Shea is in police custody, awaiting trial for the murder of his ex-girlfriend Jillian Angner in March 2023.
We were in meeting with the solicitor's office and all the other investigators that worked on this, just going over all of the evidence, making sure that you know everything, just what kind of questions the defense might have for you.
He had gone to the bar the night before. I went and obtained video footage from that bar. We ended up not only going through and getting several clips saved off of that surveillance system, but we ended up taking the whole DVR just because of the case it was, that we were worried that it was going to overwrite itself. The business owner was very cooperative with us and let us do that just because of the nature of the case.
You get the forensic evidence, you get the digital evidence, you package that up and you make the arrest and you start building your case.
We were certainly ready. We did have all of our witnesses lined up. Certain things I think we were going to be allowed to use, such as the defaced pictures of Jillian, but there is a lot of the witchcraft that he was involved in that, while it shows him as being kind of a weird, bizarre person, would not have been admissible in trial. It would be more prejudicial than probative, was the judge's ruling.
On the 24th of April 2025, John Patrick Shea goes on trial for the murder of 24-year-old Jillian Angner.
I sat in the witness box and I testified to the evidence that I collected. I testified briefly to some of the interviews I conducted.
I was really proud of Wyatt for having the strength to get up there and get on the stand and admit that he was a part of this horrible thing. He knew he had to make it right.
That was some overwhelming evidence. You've got video evidence of the vehicle pulling in. You've got the individual driving the vehicle testifying. So you add all of that evidence up, and at some point, I have to assume he realized that the outcome was not going to be in his favor if it went to a jury.
On the second day of the murder trial, John Patrick Shea's lawyer asks to address the court.
Wednesday morning, they're getting ready to do the second day of prosecution interviews, witnesses, and John Patrick Shea just said he wanted to plead guilty.
John Patrick Shea ended up changing his plea of not guilty and wanted to plead guilty and throw himself at the mercy of the court.
After the first day, and Wyatt Norton testified, and a couple investigators, he realized that I'm guilty. They're going to prove it.
My feeling is that his decision on the second day to turn around and plead guilty was a very self-serving decision in order to save himself from a more serious penalty or potentially the death penalty. That he thought the smartest move, I guess, at that point was to turn around and plead guilty.
It surprised me how late in the game he decided to plead. Most of the time when someone's waiting, they wait until right before the testimony starts if they're going to change their plea. Or sometimes they wait until the end of the prosecution's case. I can only assume that there was something in the testimony or in the evidence that he didn't fully realize or didn't know about that either pricked his conscience or just made him not want to go through with the rest of the trial.
We took the defendant's plea so that we could let the jury go if they wanted to, and then we had to reconvene a couple hours later for the sentencing phase, and the judge did invite the members of the jury who would have rendered the guilty or not guilty verdict to come watch, and a number of them did come back.
John Patrick Shea returns to court to receive his sentence on the 25th of June.
At his sentencing, he got up and gave a statement about his regret or remorse, or however you want to put it.
I think it is an act of desperation and can be something that individuals will do when they feel the walls closing in on them. But I think that's just another example of his very manipulative personality. And yet again, he's working hard to manipulate the perceptions of others to paint himself in a good light.
The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that was the maximum sentence he could have been given. 30 years was the minimum.
With John Patrick Shea safely behind bars for his crimes, the residents of Bluffton are left wondering how a crime like this could happen in their close-knit community.
Jillian was well liked by everyone in the community. Everyone was distraught by the incident and everyone was deeply affected.
Everybody in that area was very helpful during the investigation. It's just good to know that when something bad does happen, we can get the outcome that that we need to get and try to help the family move on.
Everything just went the way it needed to. We all worked together and exchanged the information that needed to be exchanged in order to get a violent person, an unstable person, in jail where he belongs.
They got the evidence. They were able to arrest him before he fled. The investigators built a seemingly airtight case to hand over to prosecutors, and the prosecutors got it ready and they took it to trial and managed to get a plea deal. I mean, you can't come up with a better outcome for a crime.
Cases like that of Jillian Angner reveal the violence and control inflicted by domestic abusers on their partners and relatives.
There are different kinds of domestic violence perpetrators, but the ones we worry about, the ones who are into the power and control dynamics, what I find so scary about them is their ability to manipulate the perceptions of other people. And part of that is their ability to manipulate the perceptions of victims themselves, that no one would ever want them. They shouldn't leave the relationship because this is as good as it's going to get.
If there are any victims of domestic violence, stalking, harassment, any of those behaviors, there are resources wherever you're located. I would genuinely urge you to talk to whoever you're close to, somebody that you can confide in, or reach out to your local law enforcement agency and ask them for assistance. That's why we're here and we want to help.
You need to let people know, because a lot of times people feel like they don't want to be a burden for their family members or friends. But if you're having an issue with a loved one or somebody in a past relationship, you need to communicate, to law enforcement, so we can help you any way we can, and to your friends and family so that they can, kind of keep their eyes out for you and try to help you.
Jillian's devastating death at such an early age leaves a lasting impact on her family and friends.
It's a very sad case indeed, and she was very young, and her son was very young and is now going to grow up without his mother and has the additional burden of the trauma of having been there when she lost her life in such a horrific way.
Jillian's family, they have custody of her son. She is always going to be missed. They definitely still advocate for Jillian. They do speak out and I think want to give back to the community and keep Jillian's memory alive.
That family is never going to get that piece back that they had. The piece is missing now. I know that they're a very strong family and I pray for them.
I still think about her son. I hope he knows how strong she was. She fought after being shot multiple times. And I hope it brings awareness to domestic violence, to stalking, to threatening behavior following relationships.
The dynamics of relationships have changed as society has changed. Looking at someone's location, following them on your Snapchat map or your Life 360 or your Facebook Live, having all these details right at the tips of our fingers in today's day and age, that's not healthy. And that's how people become fixated on others. Just be cognizant about it because you really don't know who's watching.